Are you struggling to get clients to pay you more than $1,000 for a shoot? Well, over the past few years, I've reviewed thousands of creator businesses, and I've realized that most of them are making the same exact mistakes that keep you stuck with cheap clients because they kill your perceived value and ultimately kill your sales. So today, I'm going to review one creator business. I'm going to show you what problems she has with her pricing that you probably have as well. But more importantly, I'll show you how to fix it using the same tactics that I've used to work with some of the biggest travel clients in the world. All right, so this is Emma, and she's saying that she's struggling to get clients to pay her top tier packages. And ideally, she'd actually like less clients that are paying her around $1,000 to $3,000 a month each, and ultimately be able to scale so she can hire a team so she doesn't have to do everything herself. So love that goal, super noble goal. So let's go ahead and figure out what she's doing with her pricing and how she can actually increase prices and get clients to actually pay it. So first things first, before we get into any kind of pricing stuff, I always like to look at offers. So what are we actually doing here? So the easiest way to do that typically is by looking at the website. So headline says it's time to elevate your rental. I don't really know what that means. I don't know what your business is, what you do, what you help them solve, what problem we're even solving. So I would try to get to the point a little bit quicker there. But let's read further. She says at Elevated Escapes, we do comprehensive services for short-term rentals. Okay, so we have our niche call out, so that's good. They do effective social media strategies, pro photography, and social media management. Okay, again, those are deliverables. We don't have a problem set up, and we don't know what the solution is or what the goal is that we're trying to help them achieve, right? Let us help you maximize rental revenue. Okay, so now we have an actual goal that we're trying to help the client accomplish and simplify your ownership operations. Okay, so pretty wordy here, but essentially what I'm getting out of it is the offer is structured around raising the rental revenue potential, which is great because a lot of people that are creators just don't actually even help their client do anything. Their entire offer is just around deliverables. So that's good that we at least have something that's tied to a business result. As you scroll down, it's kind of hidden, but we see that there's actually a little bit of another element to this offer, which I think is really good. So ready to sit back and relax. She says, basically here, I'll summarize, is that people are spending a lot of time managing the socials, managing DMs, all this kind of stuff. And people typically start short-term rentals because they want more of a hands-off approach. They want to build their dream life and enjoy the freedom that the rental provides. So essentially what her offer does or aims to do is allow them to raise the rental revenue while also saving them time. Again, that is not really effectively communicated through this headline here. So I'd probably rework that, but this isn't necessarily like a website design audit. I just wanted to make that call out because I think it's important. But it's important that we all know what our one-liner statement is here in terms of what our offer is. So if I were to kind of simplify this down to a one-sentence statement, it'll be something along the lines of, we help short-term rentals increase their rental revenue and save time by implementing effective social media strategies, something along those lines. And then you would make it a kind of like a simplified headline at the top that speaks directly to the core outcome that the client wants. All right, so that's the offer that we're making. Now, it's still a little vague what these short-term rentals are because there's so many different kind of subcategories of short-term rentals that, there's so many different types of clients. And one of the core problems that she mentioned she has difficulty with the properties actually paying full rate. So let's figure out what full rate is first and foremost. So let's go to her services here. And Emma actually has on her page her pricing, which typically I don't recommend people do because it's very easy for them to just look at your deliverable list and say $600 is too expensive and then just never have a call with you. So ideally, we'd like to build up the value ahead of time, which the value again is raising rental revenue and saving them time, right? So we'd like to build up that value before we do any kind of price drop. But in this case, it's okay for us, at least because we could look and kind of break this down and see it. But in general, I don't recommend having pricing on your website. Okay, so her prices range from $600 to top tiers $2,300. So I'm assuming that she wants to get more clients in this sort of range, right? But realistically, looking at her current client list, I don't think that's possible. And let me explain what I mean by that. So I had a look at her current list or portfolio and clients that she worked with. One of them is this resort, I think it is, or villas, I guess, in the Cook Islands. And if we look at the price point that they're selling it at, it's like $290, right? And they have a few different options here, but kind of a lower price point. Here's another one here. Again, it's like what, $360, $370-ish per night. This one here, actually per night is $840. So this one is actually a little bit more in the range of affordability. This one here is $750, which looks like it would be good, but it's actually New Zealand dollars, which I did the math on, is actually like $447 US. And then we have this one here as well, which is somewhere in the $350, $360 range in terms of a per night rate. Now, the whole reason I bring this up is because if we do some quick math here, okay, so I'll bring out my calculator, say that a property is potentially charging $350 a night and they're fully booked out, best case scenario, which my thought is they probably wouldn't be hiring you to raise revenue and save them time if they are already fully booked, but let's just go with it. So let's say you're charging, $350 a night, and let's multiply that by 30 days in the month. That brings us to $10,500. Okay, so that is kind of the cap. cap, but that's the peak of what a property at that level can actually bring in. Now, they're not taking that home. That's not their take-home income because they have things like their mortgage, insurance, taxes. Potentially they have a team that helps them manage all kinds of different stuff. So out of this $10,500, they're probably realistically only making maybe in the range of like $3,000 a month, which is still like okay, right? But if we're trying to charge people $2,300, they're not going to be able to realistically afford that if they're only bringing home $3,000. You know what I'm saying? Maybe if it's like a one-time thing, but as a monthly retainer, it's going to be extremely difficult or pretty much impossible to be able to charge that. So the option is either we get more of these lower ticket listings and rentals, but the thing is you'd have to just kind of stack like 20 of those to be able to hit your goal, or we go for some higher tier, we go up market to ones that are charging more money that can realistically afford us. And then yes, there's going to be less of those available, but ultimately they'll be able to pay us more. So I just did an example because it looked like a lot of these properties she's worked with are in New Zealand. So I just did some research real quick and tried to find somebody that's in the more like $1,000 range per night. And I found this property, obviously super sick, in New Zealand, that's somewhere sitting around like $1,300 per night. So realistically, these guys could absolutely afford it because let's do the math on this. So if we go back to our calculator here, so let's just round down to $1,000 a night, okay? And let's say that they're only booked out 60% of the time at the moment. Because realistically, somebody who's booked out 60% of the time is wanting to get more occupancy, increase occupancy, right? But also potentially save time. So $1,000 a night, let's say they're booked out 20 nights out of the month, is equal to 20 grand. So that's already double what all of these other properties that we were talking about would potentially bring in. Now, obviously they still have things like mortgage, they have taxes, insurance, all that kind of stuff. But out of this 20 grand, I don't think it's unreasonable to assume that they're taking home at least $6,000 to $8,000 take home income out of that. Okay. So already they have double the income and double the budget to be able to reinvest. Now here's where it gets crazy. So if our goal is to get them fully booked out, meaning that we have, instead of 20 nights booked out, we have 30. Okay. If we just split this out, we do $1,000 a night, we do times 30, that gets them to 30 grand. So that's kind of the cap at a property like this, is they can realistically bring in around 30 grand a month, which is a $10,000 increase from where they're at right now, which if we multiply that out over the year for 12 months is like $120,000. If we can create an offer that can bring them $120,000 a year, then realistically, would they be willing to pay us $30,000 throughout the course of the year or $40,000 throughout the course of the year to be able to achieve that? I think the answer is probably yes. So that's why I love going for ones that are higher ticket, because it just makes it so much easier for you to actually charge high ticket rates. Okay, so now that we know what the offer is, which is to increase revenue and save the client time, and we know what types of clients we need to go after that can realistically afford our services, now let's go ahead and kind of reverse engineer what the content offer would be for somebody like this. So it looks like Emma has two different kind of subsets of services. So she has the content creation side of stuff, and then she has social media management, which is super cool. I think we can totally work off of that and build out a pretty cool offer. So let's look at her first offer is 10 photos, 5 drone photos, 5 B-roll clips. If we look at all of these, they're very much deliverables based, right? So basically the more deliverables she gives, the more she charges, right? So basically her price is tagged to, I give you this many photos, so you pay me more money, as opposed to what the offer actually is, which is, hey, we want to increase your revenue and we want to decrease the amount of time you spend, right? So let's take a look at this. So they get essentially 15 photos and then 5 B-roll clips, which I'm not really sure what those are for, other than maybe the client making their own reels. So that doesn't save them time, right? And this also, I don't see how this directly correlates to us making any more money. Now, if we go to the fully booked, essentially we get more photos and we get more B-roll, which again is the same kind of issue here where the client has to figure out how to make their own reels to get their own result. But we do have 2 done for you reels. Now the problem here is that 2 reels is not actually going to make much of a difference for the client, if at all. For reels, you got to be very consistent in order to get any kind of results out of it, right? So what I like to do for this kind of thing, because it looks like this content creation is mostly geared towards people who are either launching a new property or need some sort of refresh, is I actually want to split that out from the monthly retainer offer, because they're very different things. A lot of times I see this mistake with creators all the time is they treat all content the same, right? So like photos, whether it's used on a website, whether it's used as an ad, whether it's used as social media content, they just treat it as the same thing and they price it the same way. But in reality, they're very different, right? So like a photo of a room, for example, that's being used on a website as a hero image could potentially convert people at a much higher rate than a worse photo, meaning that it's directly correlating to revenue. And it's also being used for like 3 to 5 years at a time. Whereas that same photo posted on social probably won't get the reach because social just doesn't push photos at all. So that's the first reason. And number two is that once you post some more stuff in front of it, it's just going to get lost in the feed. So its effectiveness is really only for the first like maybe 48 hours. And then after that, it's virtually useless. And that's why I like to create all the photo content. So all this kind of stuff as part of a launch offer where it's a one-time fee and it's something that the client can get one time and be able to use for the next 3 to 5 years on their website or whatever it might be. Now, something I might add in instead of these 20 B-roll clips, because I don't think that your client is wanting to make their own reels, which I'm assuming that's what this is for, is I would actually just make a hero video for them, right? Which is a full walkthrough of the property that they can slap on their website as the front page, and it helps increase the conversion rates on their website. And if you do that, I would probably cut out these 2 reels and I would put that more as your social package. So essentially you can keep these the same. I would probably make this a hero video and you can charge easily double, maybe even triple what this is, because if you tie it back to the ultimate goal of your offer, which is to increase revenue, and you can show how that correlates to them getting more bookings or them increasing their website conversion rate, then that's what you need to do. And I'll show you how to do that in just a sec with the traffic thing. But ultimately, I would just get rid of all of these and I would just make it one core offer and I would make it something high ticket, somewhere north of $5,000. Cool. So moving on, let's go to services, which is social media management. So I was a little unclear on the website, and maybe this is just me not understanding it. But I'm unclear as to whether social media management means that you are using their existing content or if you're like doing a full-on content creation plus also management for them. So I'm going to take the rest of this and just assume that we're doing the content creation for them as well as, kind of the management and all that kind of stuff. Not sure if that's the case, but that's what we're going to go with moving forward. So she has these 3 packages here. She also has one, which is level 0. Honestly, I don't think $285 is really worth your time. So I'd probably just cut this one. I don't think it's really worth it. So let's just focus on these 3 here. So again, what is our client's goal? We need to reverse engineer the offer. The offer is we need to increase revenue and we need to decrease the amount of time that the client spends. Okay. So we kind of have to think through our offer through that lens, and all the deliverables that we offer have to achieve one, if not both of those goals simultaneously. Let's just do a little bit of math here and figure out what we need to do in order to actually achieve that goal. Like we said, we want to add an extra $10,000 a month to the property. And if they're charging $1,000 a night, that's essentially 10 nights that need to be booked. Now, most people are not going to just book one night. It's usually like 2 or 3 nights. So let's just be conservative and say that equates to like 5 more bookings, right? So if we need to get 5 more bookings, let's figure out how much traffic we need to get to the website in order to be able to realistically achieve that goal. As of right now, let's say that they have 20 nights booked for an average of 2 nights. That's 10 bookings, right? So 10 bookings. And let's say that their website converts at like a 1%, which is pretty industry average. So we'll divide that by 0.01. Okay. So that means that they typically have like 1,000 people going to the website, and those 1,000 people result in 10 bookings. So if we need to get 5 bookings, then all we have to do is say 5 divided by 0.01 because it's going to be the same conversion rate. And that's going to give us a total of 500 additional people that we need to get to the website in order to achieve our goal of 5 additional bookings. Now, if we just divide this by 30 days, it's just like it's 17 extra people to the website per day in order to be able to achieve our goal, which if we look up at Emma's stats, we should be able to get 17 people out of 1.7 million to go to the website, I'm assuming. So if we can produce these types of results, then this should be an absolute no-brainer that we can actually get the result that the client wants, assuming that we're creating the right types of content, right? So let's look at what deliverables do we need to do to make sure that we can just get 17 people to the website. Pretty easy, right? So let's look down at what she has so far. So basically right now, if we look at the difference between these offers, the base offer is 12 posts and a 30-minute check-in call. She does content strategy, reporting, all that kind of stuff, pretty standard. The difference between this and the top one is that she does 2 more extra platforms. Okay, so here I think she's doing 1 platform, here's 3. She's also doing more content here. So she's doing 4 extra posts per month, as well as 16 stories, which I don't think she's doing here. And then the other thing is instead of a 30-minute call, it's a 45-minute call. But again, if we're trying to save the client time, I feel like this is actually more of a con than it is a pro. Just kind of a little call out there. I don't think adding 15 minutes really is a great selling point for the client. Okay, so basically the difference between these is how many pieces of content we're creating and how much time we spend. So again, if we're thinking back to how does this help the client achieve their goal faster, easier, better, it doesn't really correlate to that. So So what I'd like to do instead is how can we reverse engineer the deliverables that are required to get the client 17 more website visits that are qualified per day. And then we make that our base offer, and then we charge accordingly, which, like we say, if we can add an extra 120,000, charging somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 to 40,000 per year would be reasonable, which would put us somewhere around a 2750 monthly retainer. So I think realistically, we could 4x this. We could probably keep the same amount of post here, maybe add a few more stories, but all these check-ins, all this stuff is exactly the same, pretty much. It's just how we frame it. The pricing is less about what we're delivering and more about what we're actually solving. So if we can actually increase their bookings, then they should have no problem paying that $27.50. Now, in terms of these other two offers, what I usually like to do is instead of just adding more deliverables, which is what we're doing here, or just adding more platforms to manage, which is just using more of our time, then I like to basically make it so that they can get the result here using the base level offer. However, they can get it faster, easier, or with less of their effort, the more money that they pay us. So let me explain how that works. So if we put our base at $27.50 here, usually the next level up, I like to make it a slight jump, like say $1,000 to $1,500. It's a slight jump, but it's a massive time savings. So let me show you how that could work. In this case, they're having to do their own posting. They're having to manage their comments. They're having to manage their DMs. They're having to manage their bookings. They're having to do all the customer service, all the kind of stuff. So can they get the result that they want to? Yeah, absolutely. However, if we go back to the main offer that she says, if we go down here, what's the main goal? Sit back and relax, be able to get the financial freedom and focus on building a dream life instead of endless messages and social media stress. But managing DMs and engagement and posting and all that kind of stuff sounds a whole lot like endless messages and social media stress, especially if we're getting 1.7 million views on a video, right? So what if we just, instead of adding more deliverables or more things that we post or whatever, what if the main value add of the middle tier is just that, hey, we take that off your shoulders. So you're going to get a very similar result regardless. It's just a whole lot less of your time if you pay us more. But how this is positioned now essentially is, if we look at this price as $750, this is $950. It's only an extra $200. To be honest, Emma, if I were you, I wouldn't even want to sell this. The reason why is because for only $200 extra, I'm having to manage a whole lot of stuff. That's a lot of my time. I also have to make a bunch of stories, and I also have to manage a whole nother platform for only an extra $200. And if I want to outsource this, I'm not going to find someone for $200 that I can outsource it to. So I'm actually going to be making less than I would make over here. So this pricing doesn't really make sense in that regard from a business perspective. I think if we're putting this at $27.50, we can have a very similar deliverables list here, but we can actually put this somewhere closer to like $3,500 to $4,000. And I think that would be a good sweet spot where they can buy back their time. They're pretty much hands off. However, they still get the result that they're ultimately after. And again, our deliverables in terms of what we're actually doing is very similar to what you have here. It's just all about how you frame it and the types of clients that you're actually selling, which brings us to level 3. Now, does she need a level 3? Not necessarily. I think you can probably get away with 2 offers here, but let's just say for sake of argument that she wants to do a level 3. So typically what I would like to do is double whatever this minimum is, what she's actually doing right now. She goes from $950 to $1,850, so essentially double. But if we're putting this more around the, say, $4,000 range, then I would like to see this more around $7,500. Now, the goal of this top tier package isn't really to sell it. It's more of like a decoy price anchor just to make it look very expensive so this looks cheaper. That's pretty much the entire goal of it. So maintaining our theme of how can we get them the result faster, easier, less of their effort. Well, what I like to do a lot of times in the top tier package is actually implement some sort of ad strategy. Now, if you don't want to implement ads, then just disregard this, but I'm just going to tell you what I do with my clients. That might be a good takeaway for you. But essentially, if we're doing 12 posts, a certain amount of these are actually going to do pretty decently, right? So what we can actually do is just take the ones that are getting a lot of engagement, a lot of shares, a lot of saves, a lot of people commenting and tagging their friends and all that kind of stuff. And we can just run them as like a $5 or $10 a day boosted post, right? And we just manage that and we sell them the license to it. And doing that could put us up to $7,500 a month. Now, realistically, is somebody in the Airbnb space going to pay that? Probably not. However, again, it works as a price anchor. But if you're working with a different type of client that doesn't have a cap on their income at $30,000 a month, for example, then you can absolutely throw that in and go for $7,500 a month. Like, for example, if you're working with a company that is making more in the like $5 to $10 million a year, that's a great offer that they will likely go for because they actually have the budget to be able to do it. So let's just kind of recap it. I think in terms of deliverables, it's going to be very similar. I honestly don't know that you necessarily need to manage 3 platforms because that's kind of a lot. And I don't think it's going to help them get to their goal faster. I think it just is kind of distracting. But if the client wants to do that, that's up to you if you want to include that. But in terms of deliverables, I think the 12 post is good. I think we could maybe bump this one up. Yeah, maybe more like 20, maybe bump this one to like 15 or something, just so it's like one every other day. And then we can put our pricing at like $2,750. I put this one at $4,000 and I put this one somewhere around $7,500. And I think that is going to be your biggest bang for the buck, both for you in terms of being able to actually get paid and have margin to be able to pay people out and, actually have a team, but also for your client and knowing that you actually have a goal of getting them to a certain place, right? We're not just managing social, we're actually trying to get them to a goal. Last thing I want to mention here is in terms of shoot cadence. So a lot of times people think a monthly retainer means that they have to go shoot every month, which is obviously kind of unrealistic if you're doing travel. So like some of these are in New Zealand. I think you said you're based in the PNW. So that's a pretty hefty travel trip if you're doing that every single month. So wouldn't recommend it. What I usually recommend instead is doing quarterly shoots. Okay. So say that our deliverables here is 12 posts a month. So that means 36 over the total quarter, because that's 3 months. So that means that we would go once a quarter for like 3 to 4 days and we'd shoot enough content for 36 pieces of content. And then we just trickle it out every month. And then, when the next quarter comes up right before it, then we'll do our next shoot to kind of refresh. And then we can kind of build on our content library from there. So that's what I would do to build out a high ticket offer that clients actually want to pay you for. So if you're watching this video and you're like, Nash, I really want you to do that for my business, but not only your offer and your pricing, but things like your website, maybe your case studies, maybe your full system for how you onboard and work with clients, and click the link in the description below to book a game plan call with a member of my team. He'll walk you through basically where you're at now, where you're trying to go, and give you a game plan for how we would scale you to multiple 6 figures a year. If you like this format and you want me to do a review of your business, whether that's your offer, pricing, sales, or whatever it might be, then I have another link in the description that you can apply to be featured next, and I'll do a review. I actually love this format. I hope you do. If you do, make sure to comment so I know and like the video. All right, so now that you've seen a full review on how to build package pricing, it really doesn't matter unless you can actually get clients to show up and get on calls and actually want to pay you. So make sure to watch this video here where I explain my whole process for pitching and selling clients.